holistic, and comprehensive approach and strategy. Other factors contributing to the nationwide spike in violent crime include widespread social anxiety, economic uncertainty, mental health concerns, the increased presence of illegally owned firearms, and a strained court system plagued by criminal case backlogs that impact the pretrial release and prosecution of violent offenders. As your mayor, however, it is my responsibility to focus on the city of Houston, even while we are in dealing with a nationwide rise in crime. My primary responsibility is what's taking place in the city of Houston. Last year, the city launched a violent crime initiative that resulted in the reduction of crime in many identified hotspots. By the end of the initiative, all violent crime categories were reduced except in the homicide area. Unfortunately, the increase in homicides during the first month of 2022, including assaults on police officers and citizens, is a sobering reminder that we must collectively strive for excellence as a community to combat our increasing crime challenges. Houstonians, it is time for us to act collectively, comprehensively, and holistically to address the rising crime in our city. Every Houstonian deserves to feel safe, and every Houstonians deserve to be able to go to and from this city and are safe. Safe at home, safe at work, safe while driving down the street, safe while shopping, and safe with their families in our own parks. Since the beginning of the year, our city has felt anything but safe. And at times we have felt like a city under siege because of a violent crime wave that is sweeping across the country and even impacting us in the city of Houston. Let me be as clear as I can. Violent crime is a public health crisis made worse by many factors, including the pandemic and too many guns on our streets. Domestic violence cases have more than doubled since 2019, and more people are experiencing mental health distress, leading to interactions with police resulting in dangerous or deadly outcomes. Last week, 3 Houston police officers were shot and wounded by a suspect carrying a fully automatic weapon who fired multiple rounds in a busy neighborhood. The gunman, who was wanted on a felony warrant at the time of the shooting, was not concerned about the lives of law enforcement or the families living nearby. It is understandable that many in our community are frightened and outraged because these violent crimes shock the conscience of our city and shake the very foundation of a city that is known as a safe place to live, work, and raise a family. And as I said on the day the 3 officers were shot last week, we are living in inherently dangerous times, and it's going to take all of us working together to keep our city safe. The fact that we are living in extremely inherent times does not mean that becomes the normal, or the norm, or acceptable, or this is the way it is. We can do something about it, and we start doing something about it even now. Police officers cannot do it alone, and it is important that we give them the tools to work with, the support that they need, and join with them in creating a comprehensive and holistic approach to combat violent crime. To realize this vision, we are launching the One Safe Houston Crime Reduction Initiative, which focuses on 4 key areas. 1, violence reduction and crime prevention. 2, crisis response teams. 3, key community partnerships. And 4, youth outreach opportunities. One Safe Houston is a comprehensive violence reduction initiative that links research-based strategies to improve public safety and reduce the harms caused by violent crime. In this public safety ecosystem, HPD, the Houston Police Department, is a vital stakeholder. Let me say from the very beginning, we appreciate every single police officer that comes and works for the city of Houston, all 5,200 of them and more. We appreciate and value their service, and we are supportive of their service. And we want them to come to work and return home safely to their families. It is not just about them protecting others. It is important that we give them everything they need to protect themselves and to do their jobs. And this city has been and remains committed to doing just that. Whatever they need, we will stand by them. We have never reduced the budget of HPD. Never. And we will continue to provide them with what they need because we know that they do have an inherently dangerous job. And in many cases, sometimes far too much, they pay the ultimate sacrifice. They are on the front lines. And as we add more police through our cadet classes, in fact, one will graduate on March the 3rd, we will also be putting more boots on the ground now. I have authorized Chief Finner and HPD to add an additional 125 officers per day on overtime. These additional officers will be deployed primarily based on data-driven, evidence-based analysis of when and where the most violent crimes are occurring, and to provide more visibility towards crime deterrence and rapid response to crimes in progress. As we graduate more, it is important now that we have more boots on the ground, and we will move forward in getting that done. The cost of this initiative will be $5.7 million. To complement HPD, the city will invest $1.9 million to increase the number of park rangers by 15. They will work as partners with local law enforcement, and we are committed to keeping our parks safe. There is no question there are too many guns on the streets. In order to play a role in reducing that number, the city will invest $1 million in a robust gun buyback initiative to remove more illegal or unwanted firearms from the streets that could ultimately be used as crime guns. We will focus on the most dangerous neighborhoods to address crime in general. HPD will provide added safety to our shopping areas, synagogues, mosques, and other faith-based institutions. As a city, we must collectively condemn anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. We must also collectively condemn violence against Asians, people of color, members of the LGBTQ community, and other targeted groups. If not, our silence makes us complicit to these acts of violence. The investigative divisions within HPD and other city departments will work together to address nightclubs and convenience stores where repeated crimes of violence have occurred. As an example, on January 28, 2022, the city filed a common nuisance lawsuit against the operator of MVP Food Store at 4718 Lockwood, the property owner, and the property itself under State Law Chapter 125 of the Texas Civil Practices and Remedies Code, Chapter 125. The city's lawsuit alleges criminal activity at MVP Food Store, including rampant drug dealing, aggravated assaults, and shootings over the past year. MVP Food Store is a known drug haven located close to Cashmere Gardens Elementary School and has significantly impacted the health and safety of the community. The city's lawsuit seeks injunctive relief and asks the courts to compel the defendant to abate the criminal activity of MVP Food Store. Chapter 125 has been an effective tool in helping the city and HPD combat criminal hotspots where property owners and operators fail to take reasonable measures to address the criminal activity on their property. Our patience has run out. Even with pandemic restrictions, this past year alone, the city successfully closed 8 massage parlors with suspected human trafficking activity, where 4 lawsuits were filed and have ongoing lawsuits with Chapter 125 claims against 2 sexually oriented businesses. The city will continue to use every available tool to rein in crime with its limited resources. It is imperative that we continue our efforts to reduce crime at local businesses through increased crime prevention through environmental design. To that end, the administration has asked the city attorney to draft an ordinance for council approval requiring city security cameras on certain classes of businesses where the increase in crime is concentrated. This will augment what council did in 2008, where cameras cover the inside and those entering through the doors. These cameras will cover the outward public areas and will survey the immediate and surrounding public areas. And the footage will be held to be used by law enforcement where crimes occur. There are too many people lingering in the parking lots of convenience stores and others late at night where crime is occurring in our city. I am here to say to you in the clearest terms I can, that time is now over, and all must participate in creating a safe environment. With regards to the court backlog, each major city faces similar challenges, but Harris County has the greatest number of backlog court cases than any other city in Texas, and probably more than any other in the country, with more than 100,000 cases. We took a look at the backlog in Manhattan Borough in New York. Their backlog is about 12,000, about 4,000 felony cases. There are about 5 boroughs in New York. If you multiply that 12,000 by 5, it's still less than the backlog of criminal cases in Harris County. This condition is unacceptable, and it must come to an end. It is undisputed that several factors have negatively impacted portions of the Harris County criminal justice process. In 2017, Hurricane Harvey caused major damage and disruption to the operation of our local court system, and thus the ability of our local criminal justice system to adjudicate cases expeditiously. This unfortunate situation, coupled with the global pandemic that followed, has created a criminal court backlog. The city of Houston is poised to work collaboratively with Harris County Commissioner's Court, the District Attorney's Office, to address these challenges. What is clear is that the criminal court backlog is impacting the county's ability to bring violent offender cases to completion. Accordingly, it is imperative that all criminal justice stakeholders work together to design a plan to clear the criminal case backlog, especially those involving offenders charged with violent crimes and who pose the greatest risk of harm to our community. Regardless of what we do, even if we add more police, even if we use more technology, even when we work to put more dollars behind all of these other elements, if the backlog remains this high, we will always be fighting against the grain. It will not work, and it certainly will not work the way it is required. The backlog must be addressed. We will do our part, and thus the city, to that end, the city will provide $1.5 million in additional funding to the Houston Forensic Science Center to do its work timely in providing the evidence or whatever is needed for these cases to be handled. But again, and I hate to keep saying it, but let me be clear on this. Ultimately, what is needed? More courts, more judges, more staffing. More courts, more judges, more staffing. But the backlog in Harris County is too much, and we will always be running against the grain. The criminal justice system does not operate efficiently on the interests of victims when any part of the system is not functioning as designed. It is incumbent for us to recognize that the backlog of criminal justice cases and the delay in the adjudication of violent offenders can also be exacerbated if bail bond amounts are reduced to a nominal level. Bail bonding companies are in some instances now requiring substantially less than the customary 10% required to post bond. I have instructed the City Legal Department to draft an ordinance for the consideration by the Houston City Council, which will require that a bail bond company charge a premium which is equal to at least 10% of the amount of the bail bond set by the court. This would require that the cost of a bail bond be equal to what the public generally believes to be the cost of such a bond rather than some lesser amount. I also call upon the Harris County Bail Bond Board to adopt a regulation requiring that all companies issuing bonds within Harris County charge a premium equal to at least 10% of the amount of the bond. If the Bail Bond Board were to adopt such a standard for the entire county, then the city would consider it unnecessary to move forward with the passage of the proposed ordinance. But until that is done, I've asked Attorney Michelle to move now to putting this on the books. Time is not our friend. With regards to crisis intervention, response, and recovery, the community has an active role to play. The city will allocate $2.5 million for the implementation of the Cure Violence program in targeted communities. The Cure Violence model trains and deploys outreach workers and violence interrupters to mitigate conflict on the streets before it turns violent. These credible messengers are community advocates and leaders who are trusted members of their communities and use their street credibility to model and teach more effective methods to community and resolve conflicts. The police cannot do it alone. The community has a role to play, and community leaders and advocates have a role to play. Together, we are part of a winning team, but when we don't work together or just rely on one element, we will not be nearly as successful. And so we are calling upon the community to play an active role in being in the community, utilizing their credibility in turning people from violence and providing them with alternative solutions. Also, the Community Reinterest Network program has been effective. This program is designed to help formerly incarcerated individuals reintegrate into the community by providing access to workforce development tools, mental and behavioral health resources, housing, and other basic needs. To date, the Houston Health Department Reentry Program successfully reduced recidivism to 4.2%, as compared to the state recidivism rate of 21.4%. To expand the program's footprint, the Houston Health Department will collaborate with Harris County to implement these interventions and partners with community-based organizations to support program expansion. The city will further invest $1 million to increase the number of program participants in the reentry program from 500 to 750. There are numerous studies noting the increased prevalence of domestic violence because of the pandemic, with many incidents later leading to homicides. The year-over-year statistics for HPD on aggravated assaults with impeding of breath incidents has increased 113% from 2019 to 2020. My office had previously used CARES Act dollars to stand up these programs, and when that funding was exhausted, the City of Houston began using ARPA funding for these services. They are already deployed and are already making a difference. But what we are seeing with increasing domestic violence incidents, which can quickly lead to lethal confrontations, need more. Today, I'm announcing an additional $3 million effort to provide more services for survivors and prevention efforts to combat domestic violence. These programs supporting survivors include forensic nurses directly contracted with HPD. These medical forensic exams provide critical history about the survivors that can be helpful for community-based advocates. Emergency sheltering for victims of domestic violence. After the forensic medical exam is completed, survivors are offered emergency housing and other supportive services. Additionally, the City of Houston will look to prevent domestic violence by investing in education and outreach to targeted communities, and you will hear more in a moment from Anil Patel Davis. In conclusion, this is a public health crisis, and as a city, we will and must address the crisis through law enforcement, public health practitioners, and community partners working together. No one can escape accountability, and no one can wait on somebody else to solve the problem. Everyone has a role to play. And there are people in our community who know people who have either committed a crime or thinking about committing a crime. You too have a responsibility. We cannot legislate that from here, but you have a responsibility to do everything you can to keep our city safe. The strategy we outlined today is a blueprint for the city that can guide us beyond 2022. It's not just a strategy for now, but it is a holistic, comprehensive strategy that can keep our city safe in years to come. With the collaboration of all stakeholders, including business owners, faith-based leaders, and organizations that work with those experiencing family violence and mental illness, I am confident that we will reduce violence and emerge as one resilient city, one unified city, and one safe city. It does not come cheap. And the total cost of this program, when you include our crisis intervention, the overtime, buyback program, our investment in our park rangers, our investment in our Cure Community program, investment in the reentry program, and let me not forget about our investments in our youth, because a part of this program is to provide at least 12,000 summer intern jobs for our youth 16 to 24, with a stretch goal of 15,000 for this coming summer. That's a part that everyone can play. But the total cost of all of these initiatives for the city of Houston will be about $44 million. Public safety is our number one issue. But I want to end before I turn it over to Chief Finner to speak directly to our police officers. Let there be no question that this city is with you, stands with you, supportive of you, wants you working with HPD. We stand with you. But we also recognize that for so long, we have asked police to do everything, and they cannot. It is unfair to them, and quite frankly, it is unsafe. So when all of us join in, and I'm asking the business community to join in, because they have a role to play. Many of our technology needs, the business communities and others can help to support. We are being able to lay out this plan because of the opera dollars. But for that, but for the opera dollars, we would not be able to do what we are doing today. And so we stand ready to work with the county, to work with the state, to work with our federal partners, to work with Crime Stoppers, to work with the community, to work with our faith-based leaders and others, to making our city as safe as it can humanly be. And I'm someone who firmly believes that we will get that done. And I can promise the people in this city that we will do everything, working with City Council, everything in our power to make sure that you have a safe place in which to live and play. Having said that, now let me yield to Chief Finner.
So I just want to thank everybody for being here in our great community. I just want to say good afternoon. Mayor, thank you for your tremendous support you've always shown our city, the citizens, and our police department. I want to start off by saying just how proud I am of the men and women on our front line, patrol and investigations for the last 3 years, and I'm not talking about misdemeanors, I'm talking felony, the most violent. We've made over 20,000 arrests, felony arrests over the last 3 years, and I'm proud of that. I just want to take a few seconds to step back into 2021. The overall crime, violent crime, was down. If you can remember, we had rates of over 40%. At the end of the year, we were down up to 18% in homicides. That is the only violent crime category that was down. Our overall crime dropped, violent crime dropped to 4.5%. Property crime was down 3%. Again, overall crime was down 3.5%. And we will, that chart is up there to display it, and we'll also tweet that out a little bit later on. Over the last 2 weeks, past 2 weekends, holiday weekend, we got hit with 11 homicides in one weekend. We're still trying to recover from that. That contributed to a count of 40 homicides already this year. So let me talk about our plan, because people talk, and the mayor has laid it out. He's covered it with all groups. It is a social health issue. But what are the police going to do? In addition to what the mayor was giving us 125 officers a day, I have halted all transfers from patrol with a very few exceptions. That's going to increase the amount of officers that we have out on the street to be proactive in all of our areas, in those high crime areas, but also in the neighborhoods, in our parks. We're working with our park rangers and also addressing shopping areas, common areas. We will not allow criminals to take over our city. We're standing strong, and you look around here. We're not here today to point fingers. We're here to talk facts. But at the same time, we're getting busy in this city. After-hour clubs and convenience stores, the mayor talked about it, but let me tell you something. Nobody's going to disguise a haven where gang members and drug dealers can hang out, and it's a fortress. We're coming after you with these additional units, with our vice division, with all the code enforcement that we can come with our city attorney and our county attorneys. We're coming. Park rangers already recognize that. Kim Ogg, with her support and a new initiative, there are a lot of violent criminals who are out there under indictment, have already been charged, and they're very violent, and they're creeping around in our community still committing other crimes. If you go to an emergency room, if you got a broken foot and somebody has a heart attack, they're going to treat the heart attack first. That's what we got to do in this community, in this county, in this city. Get intentional to triage on these violent suspects. So we're coming up with a list of 200 of our most violent offenders. And I have been in conversation with like I say, our DA, Kim Ogg. We're going to provide that list, and all we're asking, and she's going to present this to the judges in the courts, these individuals speed up their jury trial. Nobody say that they need a fair trial. Nobody's saying that they don't need a fair trial, but we got to get them in the court, get them off our streets if they get convicted. Also, I've met with the directors and spoken with the directors of pretrial services, Harris County, and also probation. Very, very good conversations. We want to come up with a strategy when a person is violent and they're on bail or bond, and they provoke it, they revoke it, I meant to say, we need to go after those individuals. So we're talking, and we're going to come up with the strategy that we can communicate, not pointing fingers at one another, because it's about respectable relationships. We can sit down, identify those individuals, and we're going after them with all of our warrant teams. We'll continue to work with the anti-gang, the TAG Center. That is a center that's assembled with all of the different agencies around, our federal partners, our local partners, and it is to disrupt gang activity, dismantle those gangs, and go after those very violent individuals. The federal partners, and I just want to include everybody that's a part of that because it's important. HPD Harris County, the U.S. Marshals, Gulf Coast Violent Offenders Task Force, and DPS. Also with us is our FBI and ATF partners. I don't want to speak too much on it. I want to leave them some time to say it, but let me tell you something. Most importantly, we're bringing the strong arm of our federal government. Gun crimes, ghost guns, automatic switches that make a gun fully automatic, and other automatic guns, robbery crews. We're coming after you with our arm, the strong arm of the federal government. The U.S. Southern U.S. Attorney, Jennifer Lowry, has pledged her support, and she's always supported us, but she pledged her support again. Let me talk just about a few things right quick, and we'll pass it on. Enhanced traffic. Everybody in Houston has seen the stories on road rage. We're coming after you, not only as our agencies, everybody that's police or an agency in this region. We are going to take over our streets, and we're going to do it collectively as a team. A huge problem in our city and other cities, these fictitious expired paper plates. I have spoken with the executive director of the Texas Department of Motor Vehicles, Ms. Whitney Brewster. She has pledged her support and say that she would help us in any way. So time out on the paper plates, because whenever you look at violent crimes and violent criminals, what are they riding around in? Expired fictitious Texas plates. So we're going to stand up as a team, as a community of law enforcement, and we're going to clean that up. The mayor and I will be announcing and looking in terms of campaigns. We're going to announce an initiative, and I'm not going to name it right now because it's going to be huge. We need to, and he's spoken about it, but we got to get to a real 21st century major city in ways of technology and solving crime. Our license plate readers, our cameras, at all of the intersections that we possibly can. But I'm going to need the help of all our management districts, our businesses, and our huge corporations. Let's bring that muscle in. But in weeks to come, we will make that announcement. And think about technology. We can pay a lot of overtime, but that money at some point is going to run out. If you position yourself properly with the technology, it's working 24/7. And that's what we need in our city. So I'm excited about that, and we'll discuss that a little bit later. Community engagement. We cannot do it alone. We cannot do it alone. If the COVID numbers get better, and they should, they're going down, I want a series of town hall meetings like we used to pre-COVID, because you have to get in that community and talk to those individuals and engage them. I am so pleased to hear the mayor discuss and announce the violent interruption programs. Those are respected individuals in our city, grassroots, who everybody respects, especially young gang members, young drug dealers, and they can step in and help us de-escalate before a crime. And also, after there's a crime of homicide in our city, they can step in and help us with retaliatory incidents as well. So, Mayor said it, it's going to take all of us. And I'm excited that we're standing here together, but at the end of the day, it's time for everybody to go to work. Nobody blamed anybody here. The mayor simply presented facts, and he touched on every aspect. The community, social services, the police department. It is a comprehensive program that I'm extremely proud of. We didn't get a chance to cover everything, but as we said, you got copies of it, and it also will be on the internet, so grab it. But thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chief. I also do want to acknowledge Lori Murillo of the Hispanic Chamber, who is present with us today. I want to acknowledge Bishop James Dixon, pastor of Community of Faith, was also president of the NAACP. Thank you. I know also Rabbi Lyons, who is also present here as well. Pastor Max Miller is here as well. And
Chief Bumpers.
And Chief Bumpers from Metro is here. Thank you so very much, Chief. Okay. Now let me bring on Noel Angel of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. My name is Noel Rangel, and I am the Assistant Special Agent in charge with ATF here at the Houston Field Division. First off, I want to begin by thanking Chief Finner and Mayor Turner for our valued partnership. ATF, we are dedicated to committing resources and working with our law enforcement partners to combat violent crime and making Houston a safer city. Within the Houston Field Division, we have the ATF Houston Crime Gun Strike Force. The Crime Gun Strike Force is a multi-agency strike force, and the Houston Police Department is a vital partner within the strike force. And our strategy is to utilize crime gun intelligence such as NIBIN and E-Trace to identify and target armed violent shooters and firearms traffickers. And we primarily focus on three main priorities: commercial armed robberies, NIBIN-linked shootings, and your gun store burglaries and robberies. We also have a ATF group over at the TAG, as Chief Finner mentioned, and that ATF group is clearly focused on targeting armed violent gangs and groups. Here more recently, we've had a significant increase in the amount of machine gun conversion device investigations. Those are your auto switch investigations. And we are working closely with the Houston Police Department and the United States Attorney's Office to identify and prosecute individuals that possess, sell, or utilize these devices in violent crime. So again, Chief, Mayor, I appreciate your time, and I look forward to our continued partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also want to acknowledge Emily Whitehurst from the Houston Area Women's Center. Thank you, Emily. Appreciate the work that you all do and the partnership that we have together. Now let me, and Kenny Allen, who's Director of Parks and Rec, is also present. Thank you, Director Allen. Okay. Let me bring up now Richard Colautti from the FBI Houston Special Agent in Charge. Richard.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Rick Colautti. I'm the acting special agent in charge of the FBI office here in Houston. Today's a heartbreaking anniversary for the FBI family. 1 year ago today, special agents Daniel Alphen and Laura Schwarzenberger were shot and killed in Miami while investigating crimes against children. Last week, shortly after many of us gathered to announce the capture of Corporal Galloway's killer, 3 HPD officers were shot. Fortunately, they're on the road to recovery, but these headlines should not become regular or routine. We should not become desensitized to this type of news. We as a community, all of us, need to work together to curb violent crime. The threats we face are too diverse, too dangerous, and too all-encompassing for any one agency to tackle. There's a strong partnership between the FBI, Houston PD, ATF, and other law enforcement agencies. We work together daily to share intelligence. Our personnel work side by side on task forces, such as the Violent Crime Task Force and the Houston Safe Streets Task Force, which target violent crime and gangs. Our focus is targeting on gangs and criminal enterprises that drive the violence in our community. Each member of these task forces bring to the table what we each do best. We will also work together to leverage our federal prosecution opportunities when appropriate with the U.S. Attorney's Office. By charging defendants federally, we can enforce stiffer penalties and keep them off the streets longer. Fighting violent crime is a responsibility for us all, and that includes you, the public, our eyes and ears of the community that we serve. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Now let me bring up Amina Patel Davis, Director of the Mayor's Office of Human Trafficking and Domestic Violence. Amina.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to thank Tahirih Justice Center, who's here with us today, in addition to Hawk. The number of domestic violence murders reveal the need for action to stop the violence before it happens. DV-related homicides increased by 56%, from 52 to 81 in 2021, a disturbing trend. This means 1 in 6 of the total homicides on that chart is a DV murder. Over 2 years, African Americans represented 74 out of the 133 DV murder victims, also 56%, while only making up 23% of the population. Moreover, there are areas in our city made up of other ethnic groups that are not reaching out to law enforcement or engaging in services. In zip codes with 15% or less calls for service, minorities are the majority population. For that reason, first, we're hoping to bring together traditional and non-traditional organizations to partner and apply for $2.5 million worth of funding for proven intervention strategies in communities of color. That's part of the overall announcement that Mayor made. And second, increase outreach to our ethnic communities to stop violence before it happens. We're hoping that the partnerships that arise out of this funding add to the robust services and scale up intervention efforts to keep children, potential victims, and officers safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Mito. I also want to recognize Dr. Peter Stout, head of the Houston Forensic Science Center. Where's Dr. Stout? Thank you, Dr. Stout. And we're providing additional funding to his agency. And then Dr. Wayne Young of Harris Center, which will be we're using funding for our crisis intervention. Wayne, thank you so very much. Really appreciate the Harris Center. Thank you. At this point, let me call now Rainier Macarius, who we've been working closely with Crime Stoppers. Rainier, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. It's an honor and a privilege to be here representing the largest public safety nonprofit in Houston, Harris County, and really throughout the state of Texas. I want to bring this home to those of you listening. We have leaders in this room, community partners that represent so many. But if you are a mom at home that's been concerned about crime, if you're a family-owned business that's been concerned of crime, if you're on a neighborhood watch, watching kids walk to and from school because you've been concerned about crime, retailers concerned about crime, we've heard the complaints, we've cried with you as you walk in to our organization as victims. We're asking you to stand up and be leaders here today. Take the time to listen to the mayor's plan, the city council's plan, and what's been outlined by the chief of police. Please take the time to dive into those details and join us in being part of the solution. We have committed whatever the mayor has asked of Crime Stoppers of Houston, including a program to double our cash reward over the next 90 days in certain cases. We'll be partnering with public safety announcements wherever asked and as often as asked with all of our partners and whatever's asked by City Council and the Mayor. We have recently made headlines for leading in crime, but we are about to make headlines and leading with results. And I am so proud of the work of Mayor Turner and everybody here today. And again, we ask all of you to get really involved in the details and in the solution. Thank you.
Let me thank Rainier and Crime Stoppers for the work that they continuously do. Look forward to partnering with them and encouraging people to utilize the TIMP hotline and provide the information that's so desperately needed. Now let me bring up Councilmember Abby Kamen, who is the chair of the Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee. Councilmember Kamen.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon. And while I'm standing here as chair of the Public Safety Committee, I'm also standing here as one member of a collective group of council members wholly committed to combating crime in our city and supporting our residents. When we talk about violent crime, the majority of these crimes committed are with guns. We're facing an epidemic of violence, and in particular, I want to point out gun violence, and as Mino and the mayor said, domestic violence. Firearms are the leading cause of death for American children and teens. And access to a gun in a domestic violence situation makes it 5 times more likely that that victim will be killed. This threat to our personal and collective safety has been exacerbated by some of the insane laws that are being championed by our state right now. Criminal gun violence needs to be dealt with, period, and it is impacting all of us. But I also want to be clear that gun violence is impacting disproportionately our minority communities and our underserved communities, and that has been going on for far too long. And I also talked about violence, domestic violence, which must also be dealt with. And that's, again, what we're doing through the mayor's One Safe Houston plan. Last year, domestic violence-related incidents increased over 50% from 2020. And if I read the numbers correctly, there were 33,159 incidents of domestic violence reported from 2021 year to date. And 17%, or 1 in 6 of all homicides, were related to domestic violence. So this is an overwhelming number, and that overwhelming number is being committed again with firearms. We are committed to doing everything that we can to stem the crime, support communities, and keep residents safe. Every Houstonian deserves to return home safely to their family. Law enforcement, including those who have given their lives and risked their lives, are there to protect us all, and they deserve to return home safely too. So I want to thank and appreciate and recognize all of our law enforcement and first responders for serving our city. And with the help of Chief Finner, we will continue to push community relationships, transparency, and accountability. We must continue to harness technology and respond effectively to the threats that we are presented with. But we're also investing in our future through Mayor Turner's vision and collaborative efforts, stemming the root causes of violence from an economic, mental health, and supportive services perspective. But we can't do it alone, and we also need the community's help. We're launching buyback programs and public education campaigns. Again, I'm focusing specifically on gun safety, although there's so much more to this plan. I'm asking the community and the public to please help us amplify best practices to keep you and the ones you love safe. Use these opportunities to remove firearms from your homes that may be lying around. And I'll be very blunt, stop leaving guns in cars. When you are seeing the number of car break-ins, as HPD has reported, that is what criminals are going for. Last year, 3,600 guns were reported stolen in our city from cars. And that's just what was reported. We don't know how many were unreported. It's also important to note, Mayor Turner, you alluded to this, your commitment and our commitment is being accomplished through ARPA federal dollars. But those will eventually run out, and we have to have a conversation about funding in this city and how we look at public safety as an investment in our future. The comprehensive plan under One Safe Houston is a holistic approach, and the success of it depends on the investments being made in our communities, the crisis and violence intervention programs, the reentry initiatives, and so much more that we are lifting up, and the organizations and groups on the ground that we could not do it without. Some of these recommendations come from the Mayor's Task Force on Police Reform that continues to be implemented and effective. Some come directly from Houston Police Department, some from civil rights organizations, criminal justice groups. Mayor, your incredible team of individuals through your administration, and council members, including myself. And I want to recognize, I looked around just during this press conference, and I'm pretty sure that every single one of you has made a contribution to this plan in some way. Councilmember Jackson, through your community investments, Councilmember Peck, Councilmember Gallegos, Councilor Alcorn, we got clubs. Councilmember Robinson, Councilmember Cisneros, your commitment to youth, and so much more. And I know Vice Mayor Pro Tem Castix Tatum wanted to be here. She's currently representing the city, actually before Congress today, but she has been a stalwart champion tackling the issues around our convenience stores. So Mayor, I want to thank you and acknowledge you for being so inclusive in your plan. It is your plan, and you are leading the way, and we could not do this without you and your vision. But you put everyone in the room together. So thank you for being so collaborative and taking this so seriously. Your commitment to the safety of our residents is crystal clear, and we will follow your lead. And I also want to thank, again, our law enforcement officers for everything they do day in and day out. And Chief Pena, thank you for also being here and standing with our law enforcement. I also want to recognize our community partners. Many are standing here today, and I want to point out with our faith leaders, Bishop Dixon, Rabbi Lyons, we are also facing hate in our religious institutions, and it is going to take every one of us to stand up for that. It was only a few weeks ago that a man with hate and malice in his heart was able to purchase a gun on the street and hold hostages at a synagogue. This has to stop. I want to finally acknowledge the hundreds of thousands of individuals that are on the front lines in our communities that aren't being recognized today, because again, One Safe Houston, and Mayor, I love that name. One, we are all in this together, Safe Houston, and that is going to take us all. Thank you.
I mentioned earlier in terms of the backlog that it's going to require more judges, more courts, more staffing. Let me now bring up State Representative Ann Johnson, who filed a bill that had bipartisan support to pretty much do exactly that, and we want to get behind that. So who better to speak to this issue than State Representative Ann Johnson from Harris County.
Thank you very much. I want to take you back to 1984. Imagine if you were hovering above the city in 1984 and looked at a before and now, what would you see? You would see robust investment in our infrastructure and our highways. You would see robust investment in our bayous and our flooding. You would see robust investment in our buildings in the medical center or our schools, but you won't see any investment in our criminal justice system. Because 1984 is the last time we got a new district court, the 351st. And we have been suffering and paying the price for that failure of investment in that system for decades. We've gone from basically 2.7 million people to 4.7 million people. We got one new district court this last session, but we were already strained. I'm proud to be one of your former DAs and your former chief human trafficking prosecutor, and we were already strained in that building. And then Harvey hit. Harvey hit and we flooded. We tried to handle court dockets in the basement of the jail. Literally, the bailiffs, the prosecutors, the clerks, the defense attorneys, every person that you can bring within that system continued to work through that process, but we literally were knocked off our feet and out of that building. And about the time we started to get back, COVID hit. Crime didn't stop during this time. And so what we saw this last session was that if we stay where we are now, it will take us 15 years to get out of the backlog that's been created by those unexpected, uncontrolled events of Harvey and COVID. But we as a public can control this. And so I am grateful that the City of Houston, this bipartisan group, understands the importance of public safety. And now what you're going to have is a robust investment in police officers that will make an arrest. And when they make that arrest, that individual will go to the county. And then once at the county, there are victims of violent crime that have come to me and talked to me about the pain they're suffering and the fact that they're told, we're going to be lucky if we can get this case to court in 3 years. We deserve better. And so you may ask, why did we offer House Bill 166 on bipartisan basis to add 3 more courts? Because that's all we can take in the building. We could use 6 to 8 just to get back to par. And so we need a public commitment beyond what the city is doing here today to the county and to the state to say that it is time to invest in our public safety system. Victims deserve their day in court. The accused deserve their day in court. And the backlog is something that has to become intolerable and something that we demand gets done by investing in our court system. Thank you.
Thank you. And my appeal is that that this takes on a bipartisan point of view, because 100,000 cases backlog is unacceptable. It should be unacceptable to everyone. And so we need more courts. We need more judges, because in the end, regardless of the investment that we are making, if those things don't occur, we're still standing still, and in some cases, getting worse. Okay? So that's a bipartisan request, and quite frankly, it's a regional and a state request, and it needs to take place. Lastly, before I wrap up, I do want to bring up Director Williams just for a few moments to explain the CURE initiative, because that's that community piece, and I don't want that to go just blindly by. It's been done in other cities. Studies have been done about the results, and it's about bringing everyone in. And the things that we're talking about as it relates to reentry, as we relate to the Messengers program, this CURE program, all under the City of Houston's Public Health Department. So I want us to bear in mind what we are talking about is a public health crisis, and it's about law enforcement and public health all working together to balance the equation, because police can't do it by themselves, okay? So Director Williams, if you'll explain the messenger and the CURE program, and even the
I'll do all of it. Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate the fact that you're taking a comprehensive approach to violence. In terms of CURE violence, it's something that we researched over the last couple of years in coordination with the county. We knew that violence was a public health problem, and we knew that there had been a number of initiatives that have been tried in other cities that were actually effective. Just to summarize CURE violence, it follows a three-pronged health approach to violence prevention: detection and interruption of planned violence activities, behavior change of high-risk individuals, and changing community norms. And as the mayor said, we're planning to use members of the community with credibility among target populations that are hired and trained in methods of mediation and behavior change, and work to stop retribution from occurring or violence being created due to the lack of communication and tense situations. And I think when you have Police Chief Troy Finner really supporting this, and actually he was part of the planning of this several years ago through My Brother's Keeper initiative, you know that it's something that will work. And just from a research perspective, the Northwestern University the Department of Justice funded a research study that was done by Northwestern University on Chicago's CURE violence program, which was called Ceasefire, and found that the program successfully reduced shootings and killings by 41% to 73%. Retaliatory shootings were reduced 100% in 5 of 7 communities examined in the report. Chicago is not the only city that has actually engaged in the CURE violence model. Baltimore, Maryland, Phoenix, Arizona, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I'm happy, Mayor, that you're going to support this with $2.5 million. We expect to get the same results from this. Also, our reentry program, which I'm proud to say is actually homegrown, it really expanded from a staff person of 1 back during Mayor White's administration to what it is now. And we're happy to report, as the mayor said, that our recidivism rate is right now around 4%. When compared to the state's overall recidivism rate, it's around 21%. Also, we're going to engage in a program called Credible Messengers. And Credible Messengers basically would hire people that are trusted ambassadors within the community that will be trained, and they would actually provide mentorship experience for those individuals those young people who are just as involved. This is an opportunity for us to actually prevent secondary offenses and from our youth from transitioning into the adult system. This is something that really works. There are a number of other programs that we have that we know can be joined with this that can make a difference in terms of steering the increase in violence within our community. So I'm grateful there.
All right. I know we've covered a lot of ground. Steve Francis, I know, is here. My friend, thank you, Steve Francis, former Rocket player. He and I played together. So I want to thank him for being here. And then I know Assistant Chief, is it Ernest Garcia? You got, Cantu. That's not Garcia, that's Cantu. You're going to translate it for us?
Yes,
Okay.
as much as I can.
Go ahead on.
Yes, sir.
What you don't do, I'll pick up.
Ándale. Buenas tardes. Lo que voy a decir hoy es el alcalde de Houston ha revelado un plan para una ciudad segura. Y esto va a ser un compromiso con todas las agencias, unidad. Pero específicamente con el Chief Troy Finner, nosotros podemos hablar de la seguridad pública. La pública para ser unidos, para hacer más cosas, para poder tratar de tener una ciudad bien segura para que nosotros no podemos fallar. Nosotros sabemos que tenemos la violencia que está alta en este momento de los homicidios, pero van a tener programas para ayudar los incidentes domésticos de violencia y también de tratar de sacar de las armas de las calles. En este momento solamente voy a explicar un poco porque todos unidos aquí tienen un parte también y después de esto voy a contestar las preguntas si tienen. Pero en este momento quiero agradecer al alcalde y también al chief y todos que están aquí juntos de nosotros, que nosotros apreciamos el apoyo, pero también necesitamos la ayuda específicamente de toda la comunidad, porque solamente nosotros no podemos. Nosotros estamos tratando de hacer todo para hacer esta ciudad segura, pero nosotros vamos a tener que trabajar con nuestras comunidades, los padres, las religiones de la área, nuestras personas de influencia que tienen el poder en la comunidad que puede influenciar a los jóvenes y las jovencitas, todos, para que nos unimos para poder cortar este crimen abajo. Nosotros deseamos nada, pero nosotros vamos a trabajar juntos para que todos nosotros podamos estar seguros para nosotros, nuestra familia y nuestros hijos y todo en este Houston. Pero otra vez, ya voy a terminar y gracias otra vez, alcalde Turner. Yes, sir.
I know the report is being put online, and we will put this report online also in Spanish as well. Having said that, I think I also do want to recognize, I know Garrett, representative from Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee's office is here. So thank the Congresswoman, in fact, all of our congresspersons, because they were instrumental in the opera funding. So really appreciate that. Having said that, what time is it? There are a couple of questions, we'll take that before we break.
And if everybody could step up to use the microphones, that would be helpful. But let's do one question per reporter so we can keep it tight. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Mayor. How are you doing today? Good afternoon, everyone else. Mayor Turner, on that same stage, you stood back in October of 2020. At the time, you invested $4.1 million in overtime initiatives with regards to HPD to combat rising crime stats. Currently, we find ourselves some 18 months later, as titled as last week as the murder capital of the United States of America.
That's an unfair statement, Mario.
For the major cities, from last week, the stats.
No, let me stop you. Because, number one, I love this city.
Right,
okay?
I understand that. I'm going by the facts.
No. You are taking 1 month in time, okay? You can pick any given day where Houston's numbers may be greater than some other city. But year over year, there are other cities who had murders of over 800, over 500. You all were predicting that Houston would have like 500 murders last year.
We never predicted that, sir. Your former chief did.
That was not the case. So to say that we are the murder capital of the world, number one, it does a disservice to every police officer in our city, to everyone who lives in our city. That's like pushing the city down when that is not the case. Factually, that is not the case.
Let me rephrase the question, sir.
Yeah, please, because I will always challenge you when you use those type of hyperboles.
Right.
Okay? Because that's not true.
Let me rephrase the question, sir. Last week.
Let me just say, and on that chart, maybe you didn't hear what Chief Finner said.
I heard those numbers. We're talking about murder, sir.
So but you're being selective. We're talking about violent crimes as a whole. Every category went down, with the exception of homicide. Every category. The investment we made was a good investment, and we are continuing that investment. So facts still do matter, even in our city. Amen. Facts do matter. Mm-hmm. Okay? And let me just say now, I love this city. And I'm going to challenge anyone who tries to push us down, regardless of who they come from or the source. But I'll take your question.
Let me rephrase the question, sir. Last week, we have known that obviously the city of Houston has seen the surging numbers. Last week, the city of Houston found itself leading the 5 major cities of the United States for homicides. Today, you stand at 48. You have held numerous press conferences along these lines. With regards to the homicide public crisis, using those words that were said on this stage, public crisis with regards to homicides, why do you feel that in this instance, this investment of overtime will push those numbers down? Separate of this, Why no hiring of police officers? Why only overtime for police officers, no permanent hires with regards to the problem?
Oh, let me just say this. And you are so factually wrong in your questions. And if you put that out in the general public, you're doing a disservice, and KPRC is doing a disservice to their public. Let me just say this. In my opening comments, did I not say that we will have a cadet class graduating on March the 3rd? Did I not say that? Did I not say that as we continue to add to the police force through our cadet classes, for the immediate purpose right now, we're using overtime to put 125 police officers on the streets right now as we graduate police officers through the cadet class. Do I have to, let me remind you, Mario, ever since I've been mayor, along with these city council members, even when we faced a $160 million budgetary shortfall, we've always maintained our cadet classes. We have never reduced HPD's budget, even when we face pension challenges and financial deficits. Not one time. In every year over the last 6 years, we have demonstrated our priority to HPD and the police officers through our budget. And even when there were people outside of City Hall demanding that we defund it, we increased the police budget by 13%. So, with all due respect, Mario, and I like you, okay? The question is loaded with things that are not.
Sir, may I get a response to the first question?
Well, I'm gonna go to someone else. I'm gonna go to someone else right now.
Sir, but you never answered my question, sir.
No, I think I did.
With regards to why do you think it will work this time if it has not, with the numbers on homicides?
Let me answer that. You know why? Because this is, number one, it's comprehensive in nature. I'm standing with Chief Finner and the police department of the city of Houston. Okay? If you respect them, then I think that'll carry some weight. I am standing with the representative from the FBI organization. If you respect them, then hopefully that credibility will carry over. We are standing with representatives from ATF. To the extent you respect them, I hope that will carry forth. I'm standing with many of my council members, showing a collaborative approach. It's not my plan, it becomes our plan. I'm standing with Crime Stoppers, who is, I hope you believe, that they are a credible source. To the extent that they are, we are standing together. There is no one person. And then let me just add, Mario, what will also be helpful is to stand with the media as well, where they are highlighting what we are putting forth, letting people know the investment that we are making, how this is collaborative in nature, and then asking the general public to join in with these organizations and individuals, faith-based leaders and others, to do what's best to make a one safe Houston. It's not just those of us up here. It takes all of us. So I'm not trying to assess blame or fault. We are just trying to put forth a plan that will be constructive in nature and that will work in some very challenging times. Lastly, what I would say to you, just like we have come through the Tax Day flood and Harvey and Tropical Storm Imelda and the winter storm and social civil unrest and 2 years, going on 3 years of the coronavirus, and Houston is still standing, Houston will stand through this as well, okay?
So you mentioned the added cadet classes,
Yes.
and you've mentioned the budget, which we've known that you've added millions to.
Yes.
But as it stands, I'm looking at the Houston Police Department's operational summary. Since you've been mayor, roughly the same amount of officers are at work at the Houston Police Department now as when you first became mayor. My first question to you is, how do you explain this? And my second is there any other solution? Tonight it seems like overtime is the solution right now to those 125 officers who are already exhausted.
Okay, and let me explain it. When I came into office in January of 2016, do you know how many officers who were eligible to retire? 1,900 out of 5,100 were eligible to retire 6 years ago. Many of those officers are retiring. We are fortunate that we've had almost a third of our police force that was eligible to retire And because of their love and dedication and commitment to the city, they have stayed on duty. We are very fortunate, okay?
So that,
I'm giving you the facts, okay? So 1,900 out of roughly 5,100 were eligible to retire 6 years ago. They are retiring as each year goes by. They are retiring. And so when you bring in police officers, that doesn't mean that that 5,100 number is standing still. Some are retiring. Some are leaving for various reasons. And so you're bringing them on, but until we get to the point where you have, for example, less than 1,000 that are eligible to retire, you're going to need plenty more. And we've always said from day one that we need more police officers. Some will estimate we need as many as 1,500, okay? I've said, at least 600 more, okay? So that's what we're dealing with. Those are the sort of factors. So you have to complement and supplement in order to keep that number up.
So how do you keep up with that rate? And my second question for Chief Finner, how can you really say with confidence that your officers are going to work that overtime to make sure we keep the 125 officers?
I'm going to answer your question, but never question, and I'm not saying, I'm talking to the whole community right now. Never question the collective heart and the courage of the men and women that work for this police department, because they have stood up time after time again, whatever they face. And when everybody else is talking and running away, they are running to it. Even in COVID, during Harvey, any disaster we've ever had. So I'm glad that you asked that question, because I want to put some emphasis on it. We got some of the greatest individuals on that front line in this entire nation, and I'm proud of
it. Yes, Matt.
Looking at other cities across Texas, San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, their base pay for police officers is higher than Houston. Is there any desire to increase the pay for Houston police officers?
Well, I'm sure we're in negotiations. All of those elements are but when every pay raise that we've entered, and I've negotiated, I think, a couple with the police officers, we've come to an agreement every single time.
And then, in terms of this new initiative that was announced today, what will people be noticing most significantly on the streets on their day-to-day that's different than what we've been experiencing over the last 6 months or so?
Well, I'll let the chief answer, but I do have another response to that. If you try to single out, you're going to miss the mark. It is comprehensive. There's no one element, okay? So, yes, there are going to be more police officers on the street, okay? We're going to do that. So that's going to take place. You're going to see more park rangers. That's a part of the plan. We're going to work on the comeback program. That will come into place once it's put together. The crisis intervention elements, all of that's in there, So there are a number of pieces, but let me yield to the chief.
Mayor, I want to be respectful. I don't mean to end your press conference, but after me answering this one, I'm through. We got visitors up here, and they're tired as well, but I want to be responsive. Our men and women are just the greatest. They're going to do what they need to do, just as they've done in light of everything else. I got a simple ask from everybody. Let's come together. Let's look at the beauty and the greatness. I've been around 32 years and visited a lot of police departments, I can tell you, and talked to a lot of different chiefs. This is a darn good plan. And you know what? Let's work together. I don't mind answering the difficult questions, but let's not break down the heart and the spirit of this great document. It's the mayor's name on it, but I've never seen, since I've been around this city, the coordination and collaboration that was done when a mayor calls and asks the input of all the city council members, and they input, and they standing here today with us. So look, hey, we're going to go to work. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go to work, and I promise you that, okay? All right?
Mayor, since there's so many different parties involved and it's so comprehensive, what do you see as a target date for this plan to go into place? Is it tomorrow?
Well, yes, I mean, it's already starting. I mean, there are pieces that are already starting. The DART program on domestic violence, those things are already moving forward. The crisis intervention, working with Wayne Young, with Harris Health, those pieces are already moving forward. The Hire Houston Youth program is already moving forward. So there are many pieces. The overtime program will start immediately. Those pieces are already taking place. So there are many pieces of this plan that's moving forward. We'll start and continuing to work with Crime Stoppers and others. State Representative Johnson's bill has already been filed once. We support that bill, and it needs to take place because we can't overlook the fact that we do need more courts and more judges and more staffing. And neither do we need to overlook the fact that we need more guns, that there are too many guns on our streets. Seems like I don't want that to get lost in this conversation. And let me tell you, the water flows downhill. Okay? We're at the bottom of the heap. So when policies and other initiatives are passed, it flows downhill. So there are many parts that are already taken effect. Okay? All right, did I answer? All right, let me thank you all for being present. Let me say I appreciate all of these partners. I know it's been a long press conference, but thank you all for being here. I do want to say to the general public, I am optimistic that we will move forward, and I'm optimistic that this crime will be, that we will bring these numbers down, and that our city will become safer. And then let me just say, this is a great city. This is a great city, and it's great because of the people that live in it. Thank you all so very much. Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.